All right, we're good. Hello, it's so nice to see you. So nice to be having a conversation. I appreciate you agreeing to do this. Mhm. And I also just wanted to say how much I enjoyed spending some time with Coda when he came out to Australia recently. Yeah, got to spend a couple of days with him, just the two of us, and really enjoyed that time together.
I usually
And
enjoy spending time with him as well.
yeah, I bet you
Usually.
do. Bet you do. Yeah. You got to add that little caveat in there. Yeah, and I actually felt really grateful that he reached out to me and that we formed a friendship a little over a year ago now. Um, yeah, we've been pen pals, emailing back and forth, and it's been great. Um, and I've read a lot of your books and watched a lot of your talks and really appreciated your um, wisdom. Wisdom is the word that comes to mind. Mm. So I wanted to ask you, one of the things that I appreciate about your teachings is that you have this concept of the boomerang, and
Of the
you
what?
talk about the journey, the boomerang.
Oh, boomerang, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, it might be my Aussie accent, the twang. Hard to understand, huh? You have this concept of the journey outwards and the journey inwards. And that seems to be an important part of your teaching, that it's necessary to go out first before turning in. And I wanted to ask you about that. Why do you see it as necessary for someone to go out first?
Well, had I set up the design, I might have made it otherwise, but since I hadn't set up the design, I have to accept it as presented. And as presented, uh, we're born uh, into an exploration, and babies seem to reflect that exploration in their wanting to s- see and hear and feel and touch and everything, and the myriad of possibilities of experience are out there. So we seek to embrace them and embrace them, and we get scared of some, and when we get scared,
Mhm.
we embrace less, and we get through those fears and we embrace more, and that's the way it goes. Life is extraordinary as presented. I mean, the colors and the sights and the places and the people and the variety isn't only a new occurrence. You know, it's not that we have now 50,000 videos. There were always 50,000 trees and 50,000 stars and 50,000 waves on the ocean and 50,000 flowers. There was always a myriad of sights. So, uh, what are they there for except to be appreciated? So, if a person doesn't start off by wanting to appreciate those things, there's going to be something a little distorted in their development because all that beauty is
Mhm.
there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. There seems to be in modern spirituality today this it's a popular trend of Neo-Advaita Vedanta. So it's like Advaita Vedanta, but it's been condensed into almost the most direct path to awakening that's possible. And the emphasis on all of those things you mentioned, the 50,000 trees and the 50,000 stars and the appreciating the world that we live in, isn't really part of that package that's being presented by a lot of Neo-Advaita teachers. It's just go directly there and stay there. And so do you see that path as not working, as not effective?
I see it as consistent with everything else that's accelerated, everything else that's product oriented, not really appreciating process and appreciating uh, what's presented. So I see
Mm.
it as, you know, I was thinking about this just when I sat down here and I looked at this picture and I looked at this computer, and it really appears that we're very advanced. But I'm thinking that the largest animal, and I have never had this thought before, so I don't know how it's going to come out. The largest
Uh-huh.
animal on Earth, the brain of that animal and the asshole of that animal are not that far apart. Like what, like maybe 45 feet for a really big animal or something, 30 feet, I don't know how
Sure.
many feet, not that far apart. And I think the human race is similar, really, in a very adolescent stage. And
Mm.
uh, and there are some of us that are at the closer to the brain, and some of us are closer to the asshole. And the extremes are pretty obvious. The ones in the middle aren't so obvious, to
Yeah.
define. But it's it's nice in some ways to be closer to the brain. We at closer to the brain, we don't, or I don't mean the thinking. I mean, the head of the thing.
Hmm.
We don't want to do
Hmm.
harm to other people, and some people don't know the difference. And
Hmm.
it's I don't know if you've ever read Doris Lessing's uh, World 3, 4, and 5, describing the
No.
difference of humanity as it is, not as stages as it unfolds, but as it is. It's our technology is very advanced. Our thinking processes are very, very rudimentary. Our feeling processes are even more rudimentary. So basically, we're terrified of them. We don't know how they even fit in. So they're
Hmm.
diminished.
Hmm.
So we have to be patient because it's very early on in whatever process has been presented us. The unfolding of that process is we're in an adolescent stage. We're not at the infantile stage, but we're pretty early on. So there has to be some patience. And if people are projecting with terminology, all kinds of advanced concepts and terminology taking off uh, to such degree that it looks like it's really some things are happening because we can invent more words to describe more things. So,
Hmm.
so we're really not adolescent, but we are. And the difference is, 45 feet head to asshole. And, uh, and I've watched some of your programs, and all those people really uh, understand some things.
Yeah.
I really am
Yeah.
impressed, but they're still, as am I, not more than 45 feet from the asshole because
Sure.
we're very early on in the stage. So a lot of patience is necessary, and a lot of understanding of the elevated terminology and aspiration and concept probably wouldn't be the purview of somebody who was a farmer in the fields 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. They would have a much more realistic view of the span of humanity. Yes, there are good
Mm.
guys and bad guys and good women and bad women, but 45 feet.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I
So
like that.
we're going to play with the some of the feet toward the top. And
Sure.
but let's
Sure.
but let's not forget.
Let's not forget. Indeed. Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. So I like that analogy. And if I'm hearing some of what you're saying clearly, correct me if I'm not, that this trend of Neo-Advaita or the new spiritual, New Age spirituality is kind of following along with our technological development as a human species, not necessarily our maturity and our fulfillment of our potential, but our technological development is progressing in a certain way, and we are used to immediate gratification and things that can get us there now, not tomorrow. And so there are these forms of spirituality emerging that will scratch that itch for us and promise that you can get there now without all the work that's necessary to mature and develop and grow as a human being. Am I hearing that correctly in some of the things that you're saying?
Uh, yes,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm.
the concept of spirituality is part of the illusion of being in an advanced state that we can have that discussion even. And
Yeah.
uh, I'm much more in favor of rock and roll, and I'm much more in favor of watching Seinfeld and being able to appreciate
Hmm.
it. I'm much more in
Hmm.
favor of fairy tales because
Hmm.
one has to interpret them for themselves rather than be told what to think or even have any spiritual concepts or advanced concepts in them. So, or books, songs, music, however that finer vibration comes across, that we get to experience it and interpret it without the thoughts and the words that are going to then diminish it because the words can't do anything. You know, you say I love you. If I love you, my feeling of love cannot be possibly uh, in, increased by the words I love. You know,
Yeah.
letters don't
Yeah.
increase anything.
Yeah.
So that's the nature of terminology. It develops a life of its own, but the experience behind the terminology is really what counts. The
Yeah.
fineness and coarseness of the vibration behind it is what life is about. And life is a mixture of coarse and fine vibrations. And if we're going
Hmm.
to leave some of the coarse ones behind, if we can, and embrace some of the finer ones, that's beautiful. And but how we describe it is going to lead us into a lot of imagination because we're all human
Right.
beings. We're all, as somebody said once, we're all monkeys on this rock. And
Hmm.
there's nothing going to change that. So
Hmm.
if we define it, if we define it into spiritual and not spiritual, if we define it into black and white and Australian and American and male and female, we're going to create definitions that only exist really from our perspective. So
Hmm.
better to read the fairy tales than to read the spiritual books, including mine.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. That distinction between spiritual and not spiritual, I notice myself doing that quite often. My spiritual life and my normal life, my mundane family life, whatever it happens to be, making that distinction. And yeah, I appreciate you pointing out that that distinction isn't useful because I can see it when it's pointed out. I can see that, it's all just one life, one existence. But it is a conceptual framework that I naturally just see through. Yeah. Yeah. The finer energy that you were talking about, I'm interested in that. And there was an experience for me just getting on this Zoom call and sitting down with you of a taste of that finer energy, and I can taste it now. And I'm curious about that. I'm curious about whether that's you doing that or that's just here and I'm aware of it. or some combination of both? Like, what's your perspective on that? The fineness that I can feel and I have been able to feel since the call started.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Coda and I have, your friend Coda, who is also my friend, have been talking about that particular question since he's returned from visiting you. Uh, I will talk not in terms of truth or reality or what is and what isn't, but I'll talk in terms of what's useful in terms of experiencing more of the finer and less of the coarser. Uh, if a person sees that the world, uh, maybe in a transitional way or maybe in an accurate way, but in a way that uh, they are the interpreter, the receiver, and the transmitter of whatever vibrations are around. If a person sees that clearly and more completely and more completely and more completely, and be absolved of blame. And I don't mean blame necessarily in a negative way, but a blame in finding reason for your experience in something outside of yourself.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
whether even the weather, the weather.
Hmm.
I feel depressed because it's raining outside. It's been foggy for 3 days. I'm not, any interpretation of your experience, positive, negative, whatever, however you conceive of it, as coming from outside of yourself and not being interpreted by yourself. Similar to you're driving down the road and uh, somebody doesn't like the speed you're going too slow, they go by you, they go like that, and you get annoyed, or uh, as one possibility, or you feel this person's really having a rough day as another possibility. Because why would they
Hmm.
react so much to that? That's your interpretation of their input. So we
Yes.
could take that more easily with the negative than the positive, but I'm saying that it's more beneficial to see the next open door or to see the open door that's right in front of you, uh, to look at it like you're interpreting the vibration that is you in that moment. And if you interpret it as it's you, then you will see the open door in front of you more readily, more accessible, um, than if you look outside of yourself for whatever it is you're looking for. And so that basically reflects a lot of my, let's call it philosophy, is that we're looking for open doors not in the future, but right in front of us. What is the open door now? Because
Hmm.
there's always an open door, and if we can actually get calm enough to notice them, we will begin
Mm.
to notice them. So
Mm.
my perspective is that anything that I can do to assist a person to see their open doors, not my open doors, and not my
Hmm.
idea of their open doors, but their open doors is the only beneficial uh, effect that I can have on a person.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So,
So I
yeah,
didn't
I
answer your
hear.
question.
No, you
I
did. You did.
no,
You
I
didn't
did.
answer it in terms of like reality, but you answered it in terms of what's effective for me as a seeker. And what I'm hearing you say about what's effective for me as a seeker is to pay attention to the open doors that are in my experience right now. And if finer energy is showing up in my experience, see that as emanating from me and don't assign blame outside of me, even for a positive experience. It's not saying
Exactly.
anything about what the reality is. It's not saying you're responsible for this finer energy or a drug is responsible for a four vision, to use your terminology, or some kind of experience that I'm having, but looking at, well, I'm having the experience. It is in my experience in this moment. So in some way, it is part of me, and using that as the open door. Yeah.
It's an infinitely more efficient way to wash dishes.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Yeah. I want to come back to this journey in and out, and I want to tell you about my experience recently. So I've been with a spiritual teacher for 8 years, between 2015 and 2023. And since then, I've sort of stepped away, and I've got a young family now, and um, I'm not seeing that spiritual teacher as often. I used to go 8 times a week to satsang meetings and be very involved in the spiritual path. And so that was my really intense phase of a journey in, or an attempt at journeying in and seeking inward. Now, my life is very much focused on a journey out. It's focused on making sure my family has financial security, making sure my wife and my son are okay, looking after things in the material world, making sure things are functioning properly. And that's just the nature of how my life is right now. I might have judgments about that. I do have judgments about that, but I try not to get caught up in them. And so I guess my question is that journey out and then in doesn't necessarily all happen in one smooth sort of phase, right? You can have little epochs of life where your focus is in one area or another, and you might journey out for a little while and then, you know, meditate for periods of time and try and search in and then go back out and then go back in. So it can be like a sort of wave, I suppose, as opposed to a boomerang. Is that, what's my question? Is that your experience as well?
Uh, it depends if you look like you're creating the boomerang or the boomerang is the law and you're a manifestation of it. And your
Right.
actions are a manifestation of that, and the results are a manifestation of that. Because the character never has gets to give input to the author about the story. Never. And
Mm-hmm.
if the character gives input to the author about the story, it's because the author gave the ability to give the input to the author about the story,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
Yeah.
if if one understands or has a feeling for the incredibly minute part that this thing called I plays in the drama, if a person has some idea of how small that is, then it's not so difficult to to feel like uh, the actuality of being a puppet, and not feel
Mm-hmm.
so reactive to being a
Mm-hmm.
puppet because it's a very big creation. If you don't have to be an astronomer, although it might help to know that that it's a very big creation.
Yeah.
You just have to know how many zeros go at the end of some of these numbers of distance and time to know it's a very big creation. And if there is a law that there is a going out and a coming back, we're more a manifestation of that law than we are a predictor of that law. So
Sure.
if we see ourselves, however we define it, because in a sports game, in a football game, in a football game, American football, which is infinitely superior to Australia.
Australian football. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out.
There's so so it lends it lends itself better to the metaphor. You know, you score a
Sure.
touchdown, you score a touchdown, there's an interception, you score a touchdown. You know, it does go back and forth, but there still is a flow, and you could
Mhm.
define that flow to some degree. You know, maybe the flow, it takes a while to define that flow. And in life, it takes a while. You wouldn't define the boomerang by a week, you know, define it
Sure.
by a
Sure.
stage of life. You know,
Yes.
it might not be in the stage of life in terms of Hinduism, where it's 50,000 years and 50,000 years, but it's a
Mhm.
stage of life. So I do see that. But whatever stage it is that life is predicting for you in terms of the laws that are presented to us, you will do that. You will do that. You can fight it, you can go against it, you can say, well, I'm 18 years old, I'm ready to be a monk. But you'll be a monk for 3 years and then you'll start looking at tits. You know, that's gonna happen. And you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I know from other people, you know, I was fortunate enough not to have a spiritual initiation in life. I was a kid, just ordinary kid, bored most of the time, looking to do activities, never really read books, never really had deep thoughts, never was really uh, uh, exposed to very much depth at all. So
Hmm.
I went through a progression by good fortune that was that allowed me to not have the idea that there was going to be some big breakthrough. The only breakthrough
Hmm.
were the ordinary things, you know. You get money, you get laid, you get, you know, you get some
Hmm.
influence over the other people, you get to the control, you know. And I
Mm.
went for those
Mm.
things, thinking those were the things, not that I had to get them over with. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, it didn't feel like good fortune at the time, but I see that it was good fortune. It was part of the doors that I was lucky enough to go through so that I didn't develop concepts that I could have otherwise had. But in
Mm.
response to your question, uh, it would be it would be misleading to say that surrender to the place you are on this going out and return is in order, because it's not really surrender, because you're the doer to some degree in this game, but
Hmm.
in the game, you're not the doer at all. And
Sure. Sure.
I think this is best reflected in in any model. Let's take a sports model, because let's take a music model. Somebody is going to win a Grammy Award, but who's going to
Hmm.
win that Grammy Award is not defined. But somebody will win the Grammy Award. So, whatever it is, the institution that establishes these Grammys is saying somebody will win. You're not going to
Hmm.
be able to defeat that. So, you will try to be one of the people that wins, but you didn't design the game. You just act within it. So you don't have to
Yeah.
surrender within the game, but you do have to surrender to the game. You're not going to beat the game, but you can win within the game. And that's a very modest undertaking, and is much less stressful thinking that you're going to beat the game. I don't know if you follow
Mm.
what I'm saying, but
Not
uh,
quite. No, not
mhm.
quite. So let me just reflect back to you what I understand, and then you can tell me. I'm the character, and there's an author writing the story for me. And where I am in this part of the story is not in my control. but I can surrender to this part of the story. I can make it okay that I'm here at this point right now in my life. And I can make my life circumstances okay. I can't change the story. So there's no point trying to change the story, tell the author he did a bad job in writing the story. That's not going to work. That's ridiculous. But what I can do is let go a little bit on the journey and allow the journey to take me as opposed to resisting the journey. That's what I'm picking up. Is that close to what you're saying?
Uh, it's very close, except that the metaphor breaks down in terms of human life because we did you ever play the game Choose Your Own Adventure? You know those games
I've read
where
books like Choose Your Own Adventure books.
yes, right, okay. So at some point you decide, do you want to go to the castle? Do you want to go to the moat? You
Hmm.
like that. So our lives are more like that. We the
Hmm.
game has its limits, but we do get to choose our own adventure. So
Right.
in a book, the character doesn't get to choose anything. In human
Mm.
life, we will operate within the framework. You know, somebody will win the World Cup. Who will win the
Hmm.
World Cup? We didn't set up the World Cup. We operate within the World Cup. I'm doing this in deference to you, this World Cup story. I never use the World Cup for an example.
Thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
I thought you would appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
so within this framework, within this framework, we can aspire. We can,
Mm.
make trades, get characters, get players, trade for players, build stadiums. We can do all that stuff. So we can choose our own adventure, but we
Mm.
can't change the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It
No, I
makes it
get
much
that.
more relaxing because it's not that surrender is an absolute. It's not that doing is an absolute. It's that
Mm.
there is a synthesis that's been presented to us, and we have to learn what that synthesis is, or our life is going to be fighting against something that doesn't have to be fought against.
Yeah. 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 I think that's where the rubber meets the road for me. And that can be the difficult part for me sometimes, finding the synthesis, because I will notice myself, um, particularly when Coda was here, actually. Like it brought up this seeker self in me that was kind of like dormant for a while. And then I get back in touch with um, the space and the finer energy and the heart and the relaxing into presence. And I realized that I haven't really paid much attention to those things in the last couple of years. And it brings alive this self in me that's has a yearning for that. And then I have a judgment that my life now is not that, and it's not okay that it's not that. I have responsibilities and I have a family to take care of, and I have to make money, and that all those things are um, closer to the arsehole than the brain. I don't know if that metaphor works, but that comes to mind. So I resist inside of myself. I resist where I am right now. Oh, I have to go out. The author has written the story. Now I have to go out, and part of me doesn't like that. And so. Yeah, that synthesis, finding that synthesis and finding that surrender to my character's story becomes quite important for me. And I can't, no, I can't, I don't want to use that word. I find it difficult to do at times.
I understand.
Mm, mm,
It one of the phenomenal challenges in human life, uh, more so now than ever before, because we're exposed to so many different possibilities. The number of possibilities we're exposed to are extraordinary, and through
mm,
media especially, uh, and the way media is presented to us that there are better stories and better stories and success stories and mega success stories. And then there's uh, Elon Musk stories. And then there's, you know,
Mm,
there's so many stories that to maintain your story, one's own story, becomes the greatest challenge because we're exposed to so many stories. You know, a farmer who at one time didn't have the exposure knew that their story was to become the best farmer that they could be, do the
yeah.
things they had to do to be the best farmer. It was a very uh, it was a very uh, simple and easily presented challenge because the challenge wasn't should I be this, should I be that, should I be this. So you're exposed constantly. It's not just meeting a person. Every time you see something other than your life, the question can come up, okay, well, that's interesting. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? A person has to be
Mm,
a person has to be in tune with their own story, not anybody
mm,
else's story. You know,
mm,
this this thing that I represent, whatever it is my story. I'm not uh, I don't have a tradition. I don't have a dogma. I don't, none of those things. It's all like a story that's unfolded through me. I've
mm,
heard things, but they've all developed through me. And I've been fortunate enough to allow that to happen and not to imitate, mostly because somebody at some point told me the best story is don't imitate somebody else's story.
mhm.
And and I believed that and I stuck to it. And so I tell that to people. If you have something that turns you on, if you have something, now it's not going to be absolute. Nothing can turn on a person absolutely because once the dinner bell rings, you know, all the stories are suspended, at least for those few moments. They
Yeah,
are for humans, you know,
yeah.
especially if it smells good and it tastes good and you haven't eaten for a while, you know, all this,
Mm,
whatever it is, it's, you know, suspended. So if you can hold to the story that turns you on and allow it to develop from time to time by checking it out, but not daily, not moment to
yeah,
moment, you
yeah.
know, then and and resist the influence of other people to tell you you should pay attention to their story or
Mm,
you should follow
mm,
their story or their story is good. God bless them if it works for them, you know. My story
mm,
works for me. I would never try to influence another person to follow my story. I would
mhm.
influence a person to do what I was told. The best story is to follow your story. And
Yeah,
if you can follow that story for a while, it won't be a story anymore. But it'll still be something that's not an absolute. It'll be a reflection of absolute because that's what we
yes,
are.
yes. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, there's something really special in that for me. Yeah, encouraging encouraging me to follow my story and not take on anyone else's. Yeah, that touches me. Yeah, I appreciate that. Mhm. You spoke about not really having influences in the way you present, you know, your teachings, let's say, let's just call them that. But I get curious about influences on your path in your spiritual life, to put that in inverted quotes. You know, your development of the finer aspects of you. Can you tell me some of your influences?
I think a major influence for me was being a, professional gambler and not only a player, but more an organizer and of gambling situations and lending money and being a bookmaker and things like that, and really getting a picture of the frail nature of humanity, including myself, always desperately trying to win and
Hmm.
not win in an amorphous sense, but win in an absolute sense. Win that bet, win that hand, be really much more uh, having much more of affinity for avoiding losing even than winning, because losing is painful. And if you ask a poker player, do you remember something called your bad beats? A bad beat is when you
Mm,
lose a hand. A poker player
yeah,
would remember bad beats, but not good wins. And the
yeah.
percentage is very different. And to learn that that lesson and those lessons about the nature of humanity and the nature of the desperateness of people to try to get control, to learn that in not only in other people outside of myself, but for myself, because of course, anything that I observed and I learned and I observed and I absorbed, it was pretty obvious that I wasn't an exception to that rule because I wasn't the angel uh, observing the demons. I was one of the demons observing the other
Yeah.
demons. So it was a pretty clear
Hmm.
story to me. And also,
Hmm.
when it became less attractive to me to be part of a dynamic where there would be losers and winners, uh, that stuck with me to a point where the graduation, the metamorphosis of being somebody who wanted to win to somebody who didn't want to be part of a dynamic where other people lost,
Yeah.
which takes me to right now, because every dynamic in life that's even in the middle of the road requires someone who gains and someone loses. That is the nature of so much of human society.
Hmm.
And wanting to opt out of that part of things is a very interesting wanting, and recognizing
Mm.
how uh, profuse that the sentiment of wanting to be in control and on top is. So I got a very extended period of learning from from that being part of my life. I also had a interesting growing up period where my home life was represented by some different religions, and and frequently represented from different religions in different languages that I didn't speak. So it was fairly unique, but my interest in all of it was non-existent, and also not encouraged in any way that I could participate. So I was fortunate enough, as I say, not to develop any attachment to any of those religions, and it was basically Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, all in the same household, which is
Hmm.
unusual. But I got the idea that nobody really knew what was going on, and uh,
Yeah.
and that was interesting to me as a cynic, as a person who had a generally negative view of the goodness of people. Uh, and that also helped me because I was not an exception to that
Hmm.
forced exploration.
Hmm.
So, it goes. Everybody gets some open doors and everybody gets some closed doors. Everybody gets some, uh, you know, pluses and everybody gets some minuses. And it just works out that way. I was extremely restless and impatient and sitting in one place was almost impossible for me. So learning to do something called meditate or listening to someone or it was it was out of the range. But I've run into people who have that strength. They can do that.
Mm,
I just wasn't one of those people. So
mm,
I think it all kind of evens out.
mm, mm.
What are yours?
Was Gurdjieff no, no, I haven't finished asking you yet. Was Gurdjieff an influence on you?
Say again?
Was Gurdjieff an influence on you?
Uh, I'd say probably no more than anyone else. I'd say
Mm,
that I never, it's hard to believe, but I never read a book. I never read a book that wasn't uh, uh, forced on me through school till I was 23 years old. That's accurate.
hmm.
I never did.
Yeah,
I
sure.
and even I got a hold of it in high school. I got a hold of something called Masterpieces of World Literature in Digest Form, and I got through school by reading the masterpieces of literature in digest form. So I knew the
Nice.
characters, I knew the plots, I knew the authors, and I probably still could memorize, Thomas Hardy, Jude the Obscure. I knew that
Uh-huh.
stuff. I memorized it. So I got through school, but I
Uh-huh.
never read any of the books. I watched movies like crazy and I learned
Yeah.
what I learned from movies, but I never read books. So I was never exposed to those kind of ideas. Those ideas
Hmm.
developed mostly in me because of a person that I met that really had the wisdom and understanding not to voice concepts upon me, just questions. Question, what do you think about this? How do you see this? Did you ever look at it this way, that way, this way? Caused me to become an explorer, become a scientist, become curious. And
Mm.
so most of the ideas developed from that questioning and
Yeah.
having people around me that were willing to play that game of questioning and exploring with me. And then at some
Hmm.
point, I was probably around 27, I picked up In Search of the Miraculous and I started reading it and I said, shit, I know this stuff. I've thought this
Hmm.
before. I've thought this before. So it was very interesting to me that other people had come up with conclusions that I had come up with, but
Hmm.
that I have actually, so yes, they've all been an influence on me, but
Hmm.
influences in terms of imitation, I have strictly avoided imitating
Yes.
anything.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I've heard you talk publicly about spending time in Afghanistan, and I'm curious about when you were there as a student, what spiritual school you were part of, if it was a spiritual school or, who was your teacher when you were there?
You know what they say when they're called before Congress and they don't want to answer the question because it's self-incrimination and
I
like
invoke the Fifth Amendment.
I respectfully re- uh, reserve the right to invoke the Fifth Amendment. I
Fair enough.
don't know that anything I could say. Yes, I have been to Afghanistan. Yes, I know people. I've known people there that are no longer there. Yes, I have had those influences. Yes, I've had a lot of influences. I would honestly say that I listened to four of your videos. I listened to a guy named Isaac. Uh,
Hmm. Shapiro,
I
yeah.
Yes, I don't remember his last. I listened to two other people. I I was influenced by what they had to say. I absorbed what they had to say. I factor in what they have to say, but whether I would say, I that's all I could say from the influences that I've had. They have been
Yeah.
considerable. They have been considerable, but I crossed paths by some incredible stroke of fortune with a couple of people that I on the East Coast that played this game of questioning, which I had never done, and smoked marijuana, which I had never done, and
Mm.
just opened up possibilities and ideas and avenues that I would never have crossed paths with, or I can't imagine how I could have. And so my life has been really filled with that from that time. But
Mm,
because before that time, I wasn't really receptive to much of anything. But
yeah.
since then, I've read everything there is. I've, I've listened to all kinds of music. I've, you know, I haven't gotten very far with painting type art, but I've even given it a try. It's
Hmm.
definitely a weak leg for me, but every kind of expression, whether it's ballet or opera or things like that, I have felt that as those influence and the poetry of in music and the music itself has been a phenomenal influence on me. The lyrics of
Yeah,
Bob Dylan and all those people, incredible influence on me. But I couldn't quote them as more predominant than everything else
sure,
that I've
sure.
learned how to take in. And that's what the
Yeah.
influence I try to have on people is, they say you you should teach a kid how to learn, not what to learn. So
Hmm.
that's what I try to do. I try to tell people, well, maybe this is an obstacle to you becoming a learning machine because I become a learning machine and it's really benefited me.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Do you think it's important for a seeker to be able to acknowledge their own progress on the path?
From time to time, I do. I think that it's not only helpful to recognize your own progress, but for other people, if you have peers, which is really nice to have and helpful or
Mm,
can
mm,
be helpful,
yeah,
for
yeah,
them to acknowledge it as well, uh, because one can, it's hard to be sure of your own perspective of yourself. And one should
yes,
recognize that. Once you get a perspective that's here, you can depend on it a little more than if it's coming from here. So,
yeah,
but,
yeah.
when it's still coming from here, it's nice to touch base with other people and say, how does it look to you? How does it look to you? And then, of
Hmm.
course, ultimately, it's going to be your interpretation, but accepting their input, absolutely accepting their input, but
Hmm.
not on a daily basis where you have to compute, you have to question too much. You set a
Yeah,
program,
sure.
you do it for a while, months, years, whatever. And then every once in a while you check it out. Am I on track? Am I not on track? And hopefully you have
Yeah.
somebody who's going to, you know, say, well, I think you may be off track here, and you check it out.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I guess there's this idea of the ego in spiritual domains and taking in positive feedback from peers or even acknowledging your own progress on the path, let's say, could conceivably inflate the ego and give you a bigger sense of self-importance or being better than someone else on the path or something like that. And then that becomes a new obstacle that you have to then overcome. So, I'm aware of teachers that will not emphasize acknowledging progress and will go out of their way not to. Yeah, because of that fear of the ego becoming a bigger obstacle than it needs to be. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
I'd say I'm probably 80-20 about establishing a balance. I recognize that people are extremely insecure, and there are no
Mm,
exceptions to that rule. Uh,
yeah.
you know, between the brain and the asshole, there's a lot of insecurity in there, and
Yes.
different degrees, but a lot of insecurity. We're
Mm,
born in this situation where we're completely taken care of, and as I described in my book, then we're a baby, and there's no lamp cord. We're not plugged in anywhere. We're appendages,
mm,
we're floating. How could we not be
mm,
insecure? We're grabbing out for anything. It could be anything, any contact, means that something is we're
yeah.
connected to something. So
Yeah.
that there's a lot of trauma in that, and we do feel insecure, and it has to be recognized. But if somebody puts themselves forth to say, okay, I recognize that I've got done X, Y, Z, but now I'd like to see, is there something more? Then that person, by the nature of their proclamation, is saying, I want to know what's in the way of me
Hmm.
seeing more, of me
Hmm.
seeing that I'm constricted or whatever it is. So, for that reason, I think there has to be some balance of what's in the way and what hasn't been transcended and what has been transcended, and
Hmm.
like what hasn't
Hmm.
been, what hasn't been. And mostly the job of seeing obstacles is seeing what hasn't been transcended.
Yes.
But uh, in the dynamic that I have with people, that uh, I hope they recognize that the proximity to that we all have to each other is prima facie evidence of inclusion and acceptance and love and appreciation. Because why the fuck
Mm.
would you live with 20
Yeah.
people if
Yeah.
if you didn't think they were worth living with, if they were a pain in the
Sure.
ass and like that.
Sure.
So, I live with people, I don't just visit them. I don't just proclaim to them. I don't just
Hmm.
sit on a chair with them. I dig ditches with them. And I have done everything, everything.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
uh, they're my family,
Yeah.
so, uh, but there certainly is an element, and a fairly large element, of me recognizing that if a person says, "What are the obstacles to me flying?" they're asking me to call their attention to the obstacles to their flying.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
if I'm not doing that, we're not really friends if they've asked me to. Now, if they're not
Yeah.
asking me to, I don't inflict my opinion on people that aren't asking me to. And if people are
Yes.
reticent, I will diminish the amount of recognition of obstacles that I will give them. I know
Yeah.
people are insecure. I recognize that defensiveness is everywhere. You say to a person, "What do you think about that?" And it's like, "What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong?" And
Yeah. Yeah.
but after a while, I've seen people get over that and
Mm.
or move aside from that, at least some, and recognize
Mm.
that, yeah, I want to recognize some of these obstacles to my freedom, and
Mm.
help me out here.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate what you said about recognizing the ones that might be reticent and then sort of pulling back from delivering more obstacles to them. Because, yeah, there's a sensitivity there and an attunement to where they're at. And, it sounds to me like there's no judgment in what you're saying. It's just an observation of fact. They're reticent. Okay, that's just how it is. It's not wrong or bad. It's just that that's where they're at right now. Um, yeah, there's something important in that recognizing it, but the non-judgmental way of seeing it. Because there's personal material in there for me because at different times I've been reticent and feeling the need for security and grounding and just a base, a stable base from which to exist. And there has been for me an experience of judgment about that. Like that's not okay. Like you need to be doing more, you need to come out of your shell, you need to relax your defenses, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm quite sensitive to that. Yeah, the attunement there.
Well,
Mm.
um, uh, I heard you read Mount Analog. I
Yeah,
think
I
that
loved
you
it.
read that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and somewhere in here in the book he says, what do you seek? And you, what do you seek? I think it's a very important phrase. Not that any person is one thing, which they're clearly not, but there still is the seeker. Are you seeking in your formulation of what's possible?
Mm.
would leaving obstacles behind be beneficial? So
Yeah.
if that's your formulation, to the degree that that's your formulation, you're soliciting help. So you're always the boss because you're
Right.
saying, uh, so you're not giving control. There is no giving control. Anybody who gives control is really not understanding that you're
Yes.
the interpreter and the definer of your uh, create of you as a creation. So
Yeah.
somebody says your behavior is not satisfactory, it would have to be not satisfactory to your aim, not to my aim. You know, I
Yes.
can't have an aim for you. The aim is all yours. So if your
Yes.
aim is to say, I want to get in great physical condition, and then I see you eating Hostess Twinkies,
Yeah.
I'm going to say to you, according to your aim, does that fit in?
Sure.
And then, so then you can't say to me, uh, how can you say that's not good enough? Because you're the one who decides whether it's good enough or not. I don't decide
Yeah.
for people those things. I wouldn't want to be in that position, and I don't see myself in that position. But
Yeah.
if I'm going to field the team of people that are going to climb a mountain, I'm going to pick the people who have trained to climb the mountain.
Yeah.
And if I don't include you, it's not a punishment. It means that
Mm.
you've decided, you don't want to do the push-ups.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. No, I really appreciate that distinction. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking very pale here. Is it just the lighting here, or am I? You're gonna have to change the lighting. I take pride in that I'm a tan person, but I don't look tan. You look tan. Do I look
I
very?
look too tanned, I think.
No, but I'm the tan one. I'm always the tannest one, but I'm getting pale here. Okay, let's move on.
Um, you have a very indirect teaching style, and I'm wondering why you choose to teach indirectly rather than just directly speak about, let's say, your view from the top of the mountain.
Right. Well, I think that my view reflects the the uh, the purity of indirectness, because directness just the direct, the idea of what you're calling a direct method rather than indirect method. The direct method fosters the illusion that we are bigger than we are, and we can change things that we can't change, that we can design things that we can't design. It makes us basically godless. And
Mm,
I say that in a completely non-religious way, that it
mm,
makes us develop an illusion and a disappointment that goes along with that illusion that we're bigger than we are. So
mm.
I also see that the purity of indirectness allows the interpreter, the individual, uh, and people do see themselves and feel themselves as individuals. And as long as
Yes.
that interpretation is there, then it's important for the individual to maintain that ability to interpret. Now, how can you maintain the ability to interpret if you're being told what the interpretation is? The scripture
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
this, the story
Yeah.
means this, so uh, the the more buried the story is, the more susceptible or acceptability there is for individual interpretation. And that's what
Mm,
it's all about. It's like, what
mm,
is your unique individuality see in this story, whether it's
hmm.
a Tom Cruise movie or a biblical a passage? What do you
Yeah.
see in it? If you see, so I'm a big movie fan, and part of my program is people watching movies and not being told what they are, and they're not spiritual
Hmm.
movies, but there's an element in there, and that makes it special, and watch it. See if you get something out of it. See if your interpreter appreciates this movie, or maybe not. And same with music and stories, and even the things that I call tools that I teach. You know, I give a basic framework and try this thing, and then it's yours. You know, it's
Yeah.
not my tool, it's your tool, and try it and see what it does. I only discover the tools because that's what I did. You know, I tried
Yeah.
them, and if you try them and you find some way to adapt them that you get more out of them, great. That's what it's
Yeah.
about. I have
Yeah.
incredible regard within the framework of of uh, of the adolescence of humanity, meaning not too
Hmm.
great, not too low. You know,
Hmm.
we're not anymore in the barbarous stage, even though we build bombs and it can blow up a lot of people. We don't want to actually watch it happen. You know, we
Hmm.
want to be, and there's that, we say that's corrupt, but that actually is a step in the right direction. You know, it's more human to not want to see it, even though we're
Hmm.
blowing up a lot of people. So
Sure.
that's a strange, but in terms of adolescence, it's growth. You know, it's like,
Hmm.
it's a little growth. It's a little away from the
Hmm.
asshole, you know, a little
Hmm.
growth. So
Hmm.
you get the picture.
Yeah. What comes to mind for me there is like UFC fights. Do you know the UFC?
I do.
We still love to go and see two men beat the shit out of each other until they're bloody pulps, and that's entertainment. So it's like the Colosseum, the gladiators back in ancient Rome. That's what they wanted to see. They wanted to see two men kill each other. It's kind of that. It's still the same thing. We put
There's
it on
still,
TV for everyone to
there are
watch.
definitely reflections of that, but there are reflections of other things that they weren't reflections of 1,000 years ago, or they were more exclusive. They were more limited. So there
Yeah.
is a little bit, there a little bit of mechanical evolution has taken
Yeah.
place, but
Yeah.
you know, we're still very much in the adolescent stage, and it's really a challenge to have uh, uh, such space age technology, you know, because we have no idea how to use it. No idea.
Mm.
No idea how to,
Hmm.
forget about AI. We have no idea how to use a telephone. We have no idea how to
Yeah.
use, we don't have any idea how to use any of it. Any of it. We
Yeah.
have no idea how to use cars. We have no idea, barely have any idea how to use bicycles, but
Hmm.
certainly motor scooters, because we
Hmm.
don't know what we lose by going from point A to point B, with all the time in between becoming irrelevant. We don't know how much we lose, and that's part of our
Right.
adolescence. But we do
Right.
have, it's here, and we're not going to give it
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah.
maybe some of us can recognize that eating the whole cookie may not be beneficial, and we have to resist a little bit. What's presented as progress may not be progress.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I love that you brought it down to the level of bicycle because when you say we don't know how to use a bicycle, I go, really? I think we do, but then when you talk about what we're missing in between point A and point B, it's obvious. We're just focusing on riding and we're missing everything that's around us in those moments. You spoke before about people have an individual sense of self. They experience themselves as an individual, and that's certainly true for me, most of the time. I'm curious about your sense of self. What is your sense of self in this moment?
Well, I'm going to try not to claim the fifth here.
You've already used that once. You got one get
I,
out of jail free card.
I get
That's
one,
gone.
yeah. I'm not going to do it again. Uh, I think I would best describe it as there is a view from here, you know, the view from here, and the view from here, the perception, the ability to perceive from here that that is available to me, certainly available to me. I have personal preferences, you know, that come from my view from here, my view from taste. I've foods I like, foods I haven't left that behind because I have that view available from here. But I also have a view from here. I have that view in which this entity is not any more significant than the other entities around me, and which are not all only human, the chairs and the tables and the animals and the people and like that. I do have that view available to me, which has uh, uh, developed, occurred because of a decrease in the focus on this being the key entity.
Hmm.
Uh, in other words, the world, that me being the center of the world and recognizing other people are in the world and so on and so on and so on. And from a point of view that's ordinary perception, and then from a point of view that's maybe toward the finer edge of ordinary perception, of uh, uh, moving away from here, not in a metaphysical sense, but in an actual sense, because that perception is available to us from here, seeing the whole room, seeing the whole city, seeing the whole as big as our ability gets. Once we start to move away from the self importance that we don't even know exists to such an
Hmm.
extraordinary degree that,
Hmm.
like that. So, in the natural progression of things, I have not lost that because I don't think we should ever lose that. That's such an incredible gift. The gift
Hmm.
to appreciate the, the human life. You know, I mean, things are green. That's a fucking mind blower. Things are green. Grass is
Hmm.
green, and that comes from here, because from here that appreciation isn't there. From here,
Yeah.
there's a bigger picture. There's a different picture. So
Yeah.
interesting enough, some of that intensity of personal appreciation is sacrificed, but it's
Yeah.
sacrificed for something that's worth sacrifice.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I avoided the claiming the fifth
No,
there.
I get a sense of your experience. Yeah, I
Mhm.
appreciate that. Yeah. You spoke about moving from here to there, not in a metaphysical sense, but in an actual sense. Can you say more about that? What do you mean by that?
I think it's a very natural process. I don't know of any process that I've been part of or that has taken root in me uh, that hasn't been a natural process. Not maybe not a normal process, but a natural process.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I mean, I have taken psychedelics. I've taken a lot of psychedelics, but my view is that the gift of psychedelics for me has been to reveal what was there that I wasn't aware was there, but it was there,
Mm-hmm.
so it didn't
Mm-hmm.
create an illusion for me. It uncovered
Yes.
something that was there for me. And maybe that's not the case for everybody, but that was the case for me. Uh, and whether it's exercises or meditation or tools that I've used or whatever dynamics I've been part of, I've always felt something about the naturalness of them, that I wasn't being brought into some uh, super supernatural metaphysical state, but uncovering a more natural state. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the progression of having I and all the I's become understandable as the chaos that they are, and being
Hmm.
really exploring that incredibly perverse situation of having to represent yourself as one thing when you're fucking not. And 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 seeing the humor in that, seeing the perspective in that, allowing that to take root over years, uh, and years and years, and getting to a place where this is not so tangible uh, as it appeared at one time. And as it
Mm.
becomes less tangible, less important, less relevant, uh, it goes from the point of self-righteous indignation, which is the ultimate of I am important, to I'm a monkey on the rock, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and and that progression uh, allows more perspective that comes from someplace else from here. Maybe it starts from seeing another person's view, not necessarily your
Hmm.
view, but their view, which
Hmm.
is not an easy thing, especially when you have a strong view.
For
So you
sure,
start,
for
maybe you
sure.
start by seeing somebody else's view and you see, yeah, that makes sense from their point of view. And it could be somebody who has a very different view than you. And you hear and
Mm.
you hear their explanation and you say, yeah, I see for them that that makes sense. And so you're
Mm.
expanding your view. And then you're seeing, how is that like me in other people, the commonality, and maybe not, maybe you don't have it in the kitchen, you have it in the bedroom, in the bathroom, outside, inside, but there's a commonality there. So you become less central to the story and more part of the story.
Yeah.
And so on and so on and so on until it gets to be that you can see the whole picture. So what's
Mm.
needed becomes more obvious to you because it's not overly colored by what I need. It's what's needed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've seen people around me that I've known for a long time be able to see more what's needed than
Hmm.
what's I need. I see that for sure, and it's interesting to see
Yeah. It's beautiful to see. Yeah.
and beautiful,
It's beautiful to see.
but
Yeah, yeah.
not beyond the head. Still 40
Mm,
feet from
sure.
the asshole.
Sure.
We never want to forget that because, it's
Yeah.
beautiful, but it's teenage beautiful.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. I'm not clear on the question that I asked you, which is what is it like for you to move from here to there?
What's it like?
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, and sometimes gnashing of teeth, and sometimes willingly, but you know, leaving I behind the portions that we're enamored with, let's say,
Mm.
uh, is sometimes challenging. But it's always, I suggest for people, never let go of anything unless you got something better going. Never. There's
Hmm.
no such thing as valuable surrender. You give up your money if you get something that's worth buying,
Hmm.
and you feel good
Hmm.
about it. If it's worth buying, you don't resent. You don't resent giving up the money. You don't resent giving up the time if it's something that's
Yeah.
valuable to spend it. So uh, uh, it's a challenge to leave something behind that gave you comfort. It gave you control. It gave you a feeling of okayness, but it's
Hmm.
starting to wear thin and it
Yeah.
doesn't feel so great anymore. And the climate has
Mm.
changed. You live in Perth, right? That's where you live, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But what's that place way in the far north there where it gets really warm and jungly? What's that town called? in Australia.
Where it gets warm and jungly. That's like the
Yeah,
whole north of Australia.
yeah,
You could say
yeah.
Broome
There's a
or Darwin or
what's the
Cairns.
town called? The town called the well-known town city in the top there.
Darwin
Darwin. Yeah, right. Is that in the north? Yeah. Okay,
in the
so
north, yeah.
so you live in Perth. It's a a temperate climate. You're going to move to Darwin. You have a favorite coat that you use. You're going to Darwin. You take it to Darwin. What the fuck am I doing with this coat here?
Yeah.
But I love this coat. I loved it. It was my coat. It was my favorite coat. I looked good in it, and it kept me warm. Well, you know, it's not making it really in Darwin. You leave it behind.
Yeah.
But you only leave
Yeah.
it behind because you're ready to leave it behind, not because somebody
Yes,
tells you to or anything like that. So
for sure.
I went through these, it, the leaving the eyes behind that that uh, were important to me. The
Mm.
winning eyes, the coming on top eyes, the being clever eyes, the worrying about XYZ eyes. And, a lot of those eyes just like I allowed them to fall away, mostly from recognizing that they were there and that they were causing me trouble in this new climate. They were
Hmm.
heavier weights. I wanted to float up in the lighter than air balloon, and they were hanging off the bottom of the basket.
Yeah.
But the flight was always sweeter than the comfort of the weight on the basket. And that progression
Hmm.
proceeded until such a time as that I wasn't so big and there weren't so many of
Sure.
them. And it allowed me to see what I couldn't see otherwise.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. It's getting a little warm here. I'm just going to turn on my air conditioner. Um,
Is that a
so
metaphor or
one,
is that the...
yeah, what kind of metaphor is that? Mm. Um, you spoke about your perspective from here. You see this entity, and you also see the other entities, tables and chairs, and other people and animals. And I'm curious about whether you're a vegetarian or not, Justin.
uh, you mean in terms of religion?
No, no, nothing to do with religion. Just do you eat meat?
Oh, well, do I eat meat is a clearer question than am I a vegetarian. A vegetarian is a
Okay.
religion.
Right.
The
Yeah, an ideology. Yep, yep.
uh, it's infrequent. I don't
Infrequent.
have, yes, I don't have a story against it, but it would be infrequent. I'll I'll tell you this impression that I got. There's uh, a little a fairy tale called The Golden Key. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a fairy
No.
tale. And it's a story about these two kids that are going to find the base of the rainbow. They're going to find something. They're,
Mhm.
on a journey. And they, somewhere on their journey, they find their way into this hut where they're spending the night. And there's a tank full of fishes swimming. And uh, all the fishes that are swimming, they're hungry, they're ready for dinner. And they're looking for something to eat. And all the fishes are swimming. And the fishes in the fairy tale are saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. Because if you eat me, that's the only way I'm going to get to go on the journey with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, it's a fairy tale, it's an interesting story, but it's also an interesting point of view, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's an absolute or you should or you shouldn't or whatever it is, but I like I like a metaphor that leaves the door open. I like open doors. And that leaves the door open is that what if it were the case that the progression of not only I, but the progression of molecules, the progression of globules of energy, however they form, are more real. The evolution of those things are more fine and more real than the progression of I. So
Mm,
maybe the cells in me can embrace the cells in that form of a fish, and we can go on together, and that form of the fish couldn't go on otherwise. Well, that's
mhm.
a kind of a trippy idea, but I like those kind of ideas because it challenges the religion. It challenged
Sure.
the religion of vegetarianism. So mostly at my age, uh, I've bought the story that it's good not to eat things that are high in saturated fats and like that. Maybe it's so,
Yeah.
maybe it's not so. I don't know for sure, but I bought it,
Yeah.
uh, and I proceed that, so I don't eat stuff that's like that. I don't in any way recommend it, profess it, or suggest it for anybody else. And if they do it
Yeah.
because I do it, they're doing something that I'm not suggesting. You know,
Hmm.
everybody has to
Hmm.
figure it out for themselves. It's a very complex world in that regard.
Yeah.
And eating meat or
Yeah.
not eating meat is only part of it. I mean, now there are regimens for every possible thing. At
Absolutely.
one time, doing push-ups was good. Now it's bad for your back. You know, uh, so everything has a counter. So
Mm.
you got to figure it out for yourself. The more self-important you are, the more tortured you're going to be by your decision. The less self-important you are, you'll get through that and get to the more relevant stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. I don't subscribe to the religion myself. I eat meat, but I didn't eat meat for 8 years. I was a vegetarian for 8 years. And the reason I decided to become a vegetarian was because everyone around me in the community I was living in was a vegetarian, and it was just easier to do that. Let's just go along with what people around me are doing. It wasn't some um strong judgment about it's wrong to eat animals or anything like that for me. But there is that argument out there. There are
Hmm.
religions like Jainism, for example. Jainism is a religion built around don't do any harm in the world whatsoever. So even when they're like harvesting vegetables, they're careful not to hurt the earthworms or the little microbes in the soil, like to that extent. Um, so I'm curious about I don't know what I'm curious about. There's just like I feel a clash in me somewhere. And I hear your story about the golden key, and I appreciate that perspective as well. The fish might be able to go on as part of you, and it wasn't possible otherwise. But I suppose, I don't know. I'm just going to try something and see if it works. From this perspective, at the top, I imagine that there's a lot of love for the people around you and the animals around you and all that kind of stuff. So when there's love there, it's not necessarily my experience, but for someone that's awake, someone that's advanced like yourself, eating a pig or eating a cow, um, just logically, rationally for me seems to go against that love. So can you tell me about that?
Is eating a cow the same as eating a Burger King?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I got to make that differentiation. You know, it's not a key thing. It's I hear what you're saying, but on the level of fine to coarse, it almost doesn't register. it almost doesn't register.
Right.
uh, ang- Anger registers like 50 to 1,000 times more than eating beef every meal.
Right.
There are some things, there are some things that really are we define coarseness and fineness in terms of what's easiest for us to define, you
Mm,
know, because there are some things that we don't recognize clearly and it's harder for you to find. That's why there's so much accentuation on fixing the physical body.
hmm.
There's a lot of more than anything else, more than
Yeah.
fixing the emotions or the intellect. I mean, we are
Yeah.
really very poor thinkers, very poor
Yeah.
thinkers. We're decent memorizers, but we're not good thinkers. We don't know how.
Hmm.
Have you ever read The Bead Game, Herman Hesse's story? Uh, it's a description of the possibility of the dimension of thought, not looping and worrying, but what thought can do. The connection
Hmm.
between music and planting, and the connection, the making associations that the the power of thought can do that it doesn't do. The power of
Yeah.
emotions and the feeling for things, the intuition possible, the the vibration of emotions is so fine, but we don't
Mm,
recognize those quests as much. So we improve the body because it's obvious,
yeah.
you you
Yes.
you you do something for a couple of weeks, you can recognize a change.
Yeah.
It's not really, it doesn't uh, uh, demand or doesn't necessitate the attention. It has
Mm,
some level of importance, taking care of your body, what you eat, what you do like that, making sure you don't get sick and stay healthy. It has some importance, but it's
yeah.
minuscule compared to the level of vibration of what the intellect is capable of, what no other thing on the planet has ever been able to do, the
Mm,
intellect can do. And the intellect is
mm,
reduced to worrying and repeating thoughts over and over again. So much so that spiritual tradition have said that the mind is a problem. The mind is
yeah.
only a problem in that we don't use it. We
Yeah.
misuse it. And
Yeah.
emotions, the same thing. We relate emotions to 90% negative, 10% positive.
Mm,
It's
mm,
very unfortunate that we don't realize the power of emotion. So
mm,
I would say that question is really easy to answer if we recognized the part that it plays in the totality of things. And we
right.
put all
Right.
of, flip a coin, you want to eat meat, don't eat meat, it doesn't matter a whole lot. You know,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
put your energy into refining these things that are so potential in being
Mm,
refined and are basically ignored because they're just not so obvious.
yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I like that answer. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So you have a teaching about blame, and we spoke about it earlier. There can be blame for negative experiences, there can be blame for a positive experience. Why is it so important to get crystal clear that blame can never be true in reality? I can never blame, let's say, my wife for me feeling angry. Why is
No,
it so crystal
I
clear for
never
you?
said, I never said true in reality. Let's go back to what
Okay.
I said.
Let's go back to what
It's,
you say. Yeah.
yeah, it's efficient to walk through the next open door or to recognize the next open door, not to blame. I never said not blaming is truth. I
Okay.
said it
Okay.
is somewhat finer in the direction of something that's still finer than that. But if we wish to go from coarse to fine. If we wish our perception to go, our experience to go from coarse to fine, we have to go from coarse to fine. And
Yeah.
and we're not talking about truth and reality. We're talking about from coarse here to less coarse here. Then
Okay.
blame is not productive.
Okay. Yeah,
But
that's
go
an
on.
important distinction to make.
Yeah.
No, no, that's an important distinction to make. I
Mm.
appreciate that distinction. It's not about what's true, it's about what's productive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of I've had now I have in my say immediate sphere that are my friends and I do things with and I live around and we spend time together, like say 25 people, maybe 30 people
Hmm.
tops. But
Hmm.
there have been other people and there have been numerous people. I mean, I do know people for a long time, but I also knew people before. So of all those people, the one benefit that that has really exclusively to all the people that I've known is the effect that I've had on them in uh, in conveying the importance of getting free from pointing out there and seeing that it's here.
Hmm.
I get
Hmm.
every once in a while, I get an email from somebody that I haven't seen for years. And that's always, it's not a lot of the other things, but it's always that thing that thank you for helping me to get free of it because it is considerable. I use the example of a tire. I don't know if I've used it a lot of times. I've used it too many times probably. But if you, a tire has so many square inches or centimeters in it. And if you poke one hole in one spot, all the air goes out. That's a
Hmm.
ripoff, but my whole tire was good. Well, blame is like that. Blame is
Right.
like that.
Right.
If you
Okay.
point, if you point out there, you lose the opportunity. If it's accessible even for you to point out there, then when push comes to shove, when the pressure is on, you will point out there and
You
you
will.
won't really
Yeah.
get what you need. So
Yeah.
I advise people to keep at it, get to 100%. Because if you're at 100% and you can't fool yourself that it's out there, then you can put the focus on where it's needed. The obstacles are
Sure.
here.
Sure. Yeah. 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 So this is something that I've been looking at. Well, it's one of Vishrant's teachings, right? Vishrant is my spiritual teacher. One of his teachings is exactly that, what you've just outlined. He uses different words to articulate it, but it's the same concept. And it took, I love the teaching, like I love the pointer. It makes so much sense to me. But internally, in terms of my own mechanism and what happens, 8 years of practice and I still don't get it. I don't feel like I'm a little bit towards getting it. And
So theoretically,
in
you're saying theoretically you understand, you agree?
theoretically, I agree. Yeah, it's interesting. I had this conversation with Coda when he was here, and he was asking me about that, whether I theoretically agree or not. And I said yes, like my knee-jerk reaction is yes, but I do feel like there's a get out clause in that.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, I can't logically justify it. It's not something that I could say to you and I could convince you that it's real. It's more it's more that the part of me, the self in me that doubts, is still quite prominent. And when I'm triggered, that self comes up very quickly and it's very quick to point the finger, like you're saying. And so it will do that with Ariel, my wife, with Jude, my son, I get angry at something he's done. He's not listening to an instruction I've given him. And anger comes up and it's his fault. It's not my fault. It's not something in me that needs to be moved. And I've been the last little while, I've been trying to notice different moments of blame throughout my day. And I've been noticing, okay, there's blame there, there's blame there. But it's usually the big obvious ones, you know? You get triggered in relationship. And um, I'm interested in how I would start to see the microcosm of blame. Like, what are the moments, the really small moments of blame that I can notice that aren't so emotionally charged that might help me then start to notice it 100 times a day rather than 3 times a day?
Right. Well, for some people, uh, the theoretical agreement comes first before, and recognizing that the reaction is going to still be there, but the acceptance of the concept comes first. Not for everyone. Some people prove it to themselves by the less intellectually, but some people prove it to themselves intellectually. And I have uh, left an open challenge, and I'll leave it to you also, that if you have any example of how it's coming from outside you, I will disprove that example. And
Mm-hmm.
that's number one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just, in a discussion. Uh,
Yep.
that's just part of the story. The other part of the story is uh, there is somebody. Do you know who Marshall Rosenblum is? It Rosenberg, Marshall Rosenberg. Do you know that name?
The name's familiar, but I don't know from
Okay.
where.
Well, I don't really know him very well, but I know there was a teaching developed called Giraffe Talk, and in this
Mm-hmm.
teaching, there were interpersonal devices developed which reflect this understanding that in your interactions with other people, you can diffuse the situation by recognizing how you're playing a part in
Yeah.
that. What I teach has nothing to do with that whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. So, but it is a it is a popular, not a popular, it is a dynamic which has become attractive to some people who want to get away from interpersonal strife. And that's
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah.
But the issue that I'm addressing is that you put your foot down on the carpet and it's soft and you like it, is blaming the carpet for your good experience.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
part of the study. That,
Mm-hmm.
and to understand that that everything we see, or let's say almost everything we see, is we see it as a reflection of something being done to us.
Mm-hmm.
Like the light is bothering me. It's reflecting on my light. I need sunglasses because the sun is too bright. We're blaming the sun for being too bright, or we're blaming the sun for keeping us warm, rather
Mm-hmm.
than recognizing I am frail.
Mm-hmm.
The taking it back
Mm-hmm.
to I'm frail. I need a temperature range of 4 degrees to feel okay because
Yeah.
I'm a human being and I don't have feathers on me and I'm indulgent and I've always altered my thermostat. Rather than say that,
Mm-hmm.
it's the so if we make that study, then we get so much more benefit than the benefit of alleviating our interpersonal uh,
Right. Right.
stridencies,
Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't, that's what the indirect method that you're describing, that I'm describing, is that the source of that is the source of interpersonal strife
Yeah.
cannot
Yeah.
cannot really be addressed by altering interpersonal strife because some other situation will come up that you didn't have before. And then you won't
Mm,
have, you'll find that hole in your tire and you'll blame the other person, whether it's for good or
mm-hmm,
bad. But
mm-hmm,
if you do recognize the science going on to see that you pick up a glass of water and you like the feeling of the handle as opposed to some other glass of water where you don't like the feeling of the handle, that's attributing your experience to the handle.
mm, mm.
You know, how
Yeah,
many times a day does that happen?
yeah, a
You know,
lot.
a
Mm.
lot. Yes, a lot. Well, I can't say how good the people that I have passed that on to is, but they are recognizing it more and more. They recognize
Yeah.
it more and more. And it's not only is it interesting, but it's fun because we're not dealing with, I hate you. We're not dealing with, you
Mm-hmm,
ruined my life. We're dealing with,
mm-hmm.
isn't that interesting? And
Yes,
isn't that
yes,
interesting is so much richer than,
yes, yes. Okay, so it's like baby steps. You pick up a cup and you notice you like the feel of it and you attribute that to yourself. I have a preference for cups that feel like this. It's not about the cup, it's about me and my preferences. And once you can recognize that really clearly, then you can take it to the interpersonal domain and start to see some of that, but not until you've done this study.
yes. And a lot of
Yeah.
times you're recognizing how you are involved will reflect on some frailty in you, like an indulgence in you. I'm used to this. I've made myself
Yes.
habituated to this. So it changes a little, and I feel like, and it could be really a small thing, you know.
Yes.
So a lot of times at that, and that is not frequently attractive to people to attribute things to their own frailty. It's much easier to attribute it to other things. But listen, how can you recognize your own frailty unless you recognize your own frailty?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. We're coming close to time. I have I have so many questions written down and I've only gotten through a very small fraction of them. Um, but maybe we can do a bit of rapid fire. Does that sound okay to you?
We could do rapid fire. We could try it. I don't know what it'll be like, but I'm not much of a rapid fire guy, but we could try it. But
We
what
can
I
try
want you to
together.
know is that I'm not a busy person and I don't deal with
So
a
you
lot
have
of people.
time.
I have time. I don't deal with a lot of people, and I take time with the people that I do deal with. So if you want to be one of those people, we can talk to each other, and it doesn't have to be in an interview form, which
Sure,
is a
sure.
little bit add on to start with,
Yeah.
and we can talk about all kinds of stuff if you like.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
Okay,
no, I
but
appreciate that.
let's try the rapid fire. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Um, so self-destructive behaviors, one of them is self-pity, and I notice myself feeling sorry for myself a lot. And I'm interested in what's the first step to recognizing that and then being able to change it.
I don't have a rapid fire for that one. Let's try
It
another one.
takes a while. I appreciate that. You may not have a rapid fire for any of these, but
I
that's
may not
okay.
have. I'll try a couple more. I have a response to that, but not a rapid fire one.
Sure, no, that's okay. You speak of a buzz. I've heard you speak of a buzz, and there's a buzz sustaining all of our lives at the core of our being. And you talk about it being an energy, a light, and a sound. What is that? What is that buzz?
Yeah, we haven't touched on that, but it's something that it's important to talk about because everybody recognizes that energy exists. It's not an esoteric concept. It's not something because we use the word energy, we've defined it in something,
Mm,
but we know that electrons are moving. We know that that the creation is in motion. We know that it's not stationary, but it appears stationary to us unless we see movement. But it's not stationary. Everything in this hand is in motion. There's motion going
mhm.
on there, but
Yeah.
it's generally not observable to us.
Yeah.
But and when there's motion, there's vibration, and vibration
Hmm.
has an existence. It can be recognized, but it can't be recognized externally because our eyes don't have the ability and our ears don't have the ability to pick up the fineness of that thing that keeps everything going.
Hmm.
But the tail end of it, the tail end of it, it descends to us. We're pretty coarse, you know. We're formulations. We're like a few steps up from the table or from the computer, from but we are steps up from it, but it has descended in a way to us through levels of fineness to
Hmm.
manifesting form and like that. And uh, so since that fineness descends and keeps creating, and this is only a way of talking about it, it
Sure,
must be
sure.
it must be retraceable in the other direction.
Hmm.
But where to start from? That's the
Hmm.
question. Because we're not going to be able to start from pure and perfect energy. It's
Mm.
not accessible to us, especially to us because we're, between the asshole and the brain. And, we're fairly coarse. But it is
Hmm.
accessible to us at the finer edge of our coarseness. It actually comes down to that point. And if we can
Mm.
make connection at that point, we can follow it as far as we can follow it.
Mm.
And this is an intangible, and it involves leaving a lot of this behind, at least for moments, but
Yeah.
it is a possibility. So in this training that people do, whether it's following their breath or staring at a candle or something like that, which in my opinion are possibly methods for leaving this behind and having that which creates it surface. Uh, it's possible, but for we in the Western world that are so complex and have traveled so far away from that, for us to be
Hmm.
able to really follow our breath to that point is unrealistic. But there
Mm.
is a point that it comes to us that we can conceivably follow. And
Yeah.
I was shown that point, that technique, that knowledge, that possibility when I was quite young. Didn't really appreciate it, didn't really understand it, didn't really practice it. But since then, the I have allowed that to become more and more of my reality. And
Mm.
there is something there where we can actually feel that we are buzzing,
Yeah. Yeah.
that we are,
Yeah.
and people trip over it, like some extreme thing happens or some severe change of state of being happens extremely, some opening happens by some circumstance, and we
Hmm.
feel something that's like a buzz. It's not a descriptive buzz, but it's a tangible vibration, like we are in vibration.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that isn't a metaphysical state. That is the case. We are in vibration, but we're so externally focused that
Mm.
we don't, that's not our experience. And that
Mm.
vibration manifests as sound, as light, and it all exists on a finer level. And it's experienceable as natural, not as a supernatural, but
Sure.
it's there. Uh,
Sure.
but that some stuff has to be left behind that's
Yeah.
makes it, so it's unfortunate that the interpretation of meditation has become a way to relax, or because it has so much possibility for us to begin that reconnection uh, to to what is.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a lightning answer, but it was important really that it be included in this discussion because it is very much part of things.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a fineness that I experienced at the start of this conversation. It's less in my awareness now. I think because of the activity of the conversation and the mental energy for me, it's a different energetic experience now, but there was a fineness there that I associate with the buzz that you're pointing to. And meditating on the breath for me can quieten the mind, but it won't necessarily take me to that buzz. But what I do find effective is practicing self-inquiry, like asking the question, what am I? And, you know, moving my awareness back and trying to get to the answer, what am I? But just keep asking the question again and again. That takes me to that buzz. But it's not something that stays around. Once I stop inquiring, that I come back to my ordinary waking consciousness. I suppose because there's stuff in the way, right? There's obstacles in the way in me to that being the ongoing experience. Yeah. Would you say that that's accurate?
I'd say that's accurate, but let's call obstacles human life.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Just
there
living.
it's part of our being. We do things, we see things. For that merging to happen, that 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 I feel that buzz, that's my constant companion, uh, is only a product of a lot of years of
Yeah.
something. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but to look at to look at life as an obstacle to something is I'm not going to go there because life
Sure.
is
No, I appreciate that.
yeah,
Yeah.
life is
That's
a
that's me.
beautiful yeah. Kids are, I have two kids, and that I raised and I was around and like that. I wasn't so good at it really, but uh, I mean, I know what it is to be good at something, and that's not something I was good at. But I think my son is very good at it, so I can see the difference because he has kids and he's good at it. I wasn't so good at it, but I think it's a credible thing to be good at. So you're there.
Why do you say that you weren't good at it? Like what tells you that?
Uh, it's, uh, I'm not going to go there really. It's not something that
Okay.
I'm reluctant to talk about. I mean, if I'm saying I'm not good at it, I talk about why I'm not good at it. But let's save that for another time, okay?
Sure. So we've come to time. I do have a lot of other questions, but I want to respect your time as well. So, is there anything else that you want to say that you feel like we haven't spoken about?
I think we spoke about a lot.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
It was very nice for me, and
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the sincerity of your questions. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate your ability to listen, which is obviously a gift that you have. I don't know how you got it. Maybe it's genetic, maybe you developed it or whatever, but don't think it's not a gift because everybody doesn't have it. And
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and this has been a nice experience for me. And anytime you want to do it again and in any form at all, I'm down.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Yeah, it's been really lovely for me talking to you as well. Really,
Okay.
really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. And I think I'm gonna have to watch it again to to hear some of what you've been saying. But even just the little taste I've got has been, yeah, amazing. So thank you.